Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coach Krisler's Convos. I am joined today by a new friend. Her name is Kristin. So welcome, Kristin. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much, Krisler. I'm so excited to be a part of this.
Well, before we get into talking about your health journey and use of functional medicine, tell us a little bit about you. So, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Sure. So I live in New Jersey with my husband and my three kids. I have a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. And I have lived in New Jersey my whole life. I am a Jersey girl. And I am a functional medicine certified health coach.
Awesome. And so, as a health coach, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So as a functional medicine certified health coach, I work with and partner with specifically moms really looking for new avenues to wellness for both themselves and their families.
Okay, awesome. And so, tell us a little bit about kind of what brought you into the health and wellness sphere. Why did you want to become a health coach?
I wanted to become a health coach really because of my own personal journey. I have kind of a long story that I would love to share with others and inspire others with that. And I wanted to be able to help other people and also bring people together because I felt like on my journey, I felt alone a lot of times. So I think really supporting one another and creating community is a key piece in really healing yourself and your family.
Yeah, I hear that so many times from people when they are talking about, testing, trying to find the answer, going to see doctors, all the different things that even though they're having all of these interactions with different medical professionals, they still feel like they're on the road walking alone. And so I think it's so important for people to understand that there are folks out there like us who are ready to partner with them and say, hey, you are not alone on this journey. We are here to help you, to link arms, to help advocate, for you, help you know what questions to ask and those types of things to really empower people to take their health back into their own hands. So I think that's fantastic. So you mentioned you have a long health journey history, and I know we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but for everybody that's watching, give us a little bit about kind of where your health journey really started. Kind of get us started on that.
Sure. So my health journey really started with the birth of my third child. So when my daughter was born about 11 years ago, she was always really sick with different viruses. And then around 6 months, she contracted RSV, which ended her up in the hospital, and she had to have a lot of antibiotics to treat it. So she was really just in poor health from the beginning of her life, really. And after she got better from the RSV, I actually got really sick myself. I came down with a sinus infection. I was run down, and I took a course of antibiotics and then ended up contracting C. diff or C. difficile, which is a bad gut infection. So I was extremely depleted. I had actually gut issues myself going back to my 20s, but when I had seen doctors, I was really just diagnosed as having IBS, given maybe a few medications here and there that really never helped too much. So I sort of just learned to live with it, really, my symptoms. And so I guess at that point, I had my third child. I was really depleted, taking care of her all the time because she was always sick. And then I got sick myself. And then the antibiotics really just kind of broke me, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So in thinking about that, thinking about all the moms out there who have been in your position, or maybe they're new moms right now and they're dealing with, their child being sick. I think in many ways we do moms a disservice or parents a disservice by saying, oh, well, they're just a kid. They're just sick. They get sick all the time. It's totally normal. And while, yes, they might get sick, it isn't normal to be sick back to back to back to back to back, right? So, so how was that making you feel as a mom that your child was constantly getting sick and then of course ended up with RSV?
Yeah, I mean, we were certainly, I was sick of being sick. I was sick of always having a sick child. And to make it even worse, after I healed from the C. diff with the antibiotics and whatnot, my daughter was diagnosed with a whole bunch of life-threatening food allergies.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of added a whole nother level to what was going on. She obviously had this weaker immune system, but now we found out, oh, she has all these food allergies. And that one really was surprising to me because my boys didn't have any food allergies. My husband I didn't have food allergies. So I was really just taken aback by that. And the way we found out was I fed her eggs, and because she was starting to go into solids. She was probably around 9 months when I fed the eggs, and she broke out in hives. But looking back, actually a little earlier, I had went out with my family one time and we all had shellfish, and I breastfed her when I came back. And the next morning she was covered head to toe in hives, which was crazy to me that I breastfed her and she probably contracted, the shellfish. She already had the allergy, and then it exposed her through the breast milk. But my pediatrician didn't believe me. He said he had never seen that before, ever. And that no way that it could have come through the breast milk. Like, that just seems impossible. So it wasn't until the 9-month mark where she actually had hives from the eggs that he was like, oh, okay, I think she probably has food allergies. So then we started, just with a regular allergist. And I went into the office and he, shared with me the blood work, and she was allergic to eggs, shellfish, peanuts, multiple tree nuts. And he was like, this is going to be really hard for you. You can't take her to an ice cream parlor. That place is dusted with nuts. And he was like, you can't go to restaurants. And I left there just like in tears, so sad, feeling so alone. I'm like, I have 2 other kids to deal with. She's got all these issues. I'm gonna have to be reading packages more carefully. I'm afraid to take her to restaurants. So it was just like a extremely overwhelming and like isolating time, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. So, when you were mentioning breastfeeding your daughter and, the doctor not believing you, it's like, when you think about that, it doesn't quite make sense because you're being encouraged to breastfeed because your child is getting all of the good things from that, but yet you're being told it couldn't be possible that she could be getting bad things through breast milk as well, or things that would negatively affect her. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But also, just thinking about what you were saying about feeling very heavy after leaving, that next appointment, and feeling alone and overwhelmed. I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, whether they are dealing with a child who has, an illness, or themselves, maybe they are dealing with constant illness or pain, or they're a caretaker of somebody. I think we've all been somewhere in some season of life where we've just felt heavy and we don't know what to do. And we, are kind of questioning all the things like, where do I even start with this? So kind of what was your first step into, okay, figuring out how to navigate this really difficult situation?
Yeah, I mean, so my first step obviously was I had to start learning how to read food out, labels, and become the food allergy parent that has to, be aware of these things, because this is life or death. You have to make sure that you are doing a good job on that front.
Yeah.
So that was hard, but I got very lucky at that moment because my mother was seeing a functional nutritionist, and that was local in my area. She had a diagnosis of Crohn's disease, and she was open to like looking different ways. So she was able to put me in touch with this person who really opened my eyes. Like, well, first of all, she believed me with the breast milk and the shellfish
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And second of all, she just, opened my eyes to even just how, if I was so depleted and I'm breastfeeding a baby that then is depleted, I mean, where were we at, right? Like I needed to
Right.
rebuild myself too. And I had the C. diff and the gut issues. So I worked with her to kind of get myself in order. And I learned a lot. Like I started just learning like how food impacts us, how, reading packages is important, the different chemicals in foods can impact us. And so that was like the start. And
So was that your first exposure to functional medicine and dealing with nutrition as a way to kind of move forward in healing your body?
yes, that was my first exposure, and I'm forever grateful to that nutritionist. And I think that, it's been a long journey. It was, that was just kind of the very beginning, and I worked on myself really first. And then ultimately, I ended up, the more I learned, the more I felt, wow, this maybe could help my daughter. Like this could
Mhm.
possibly be a game changer. So we ended up going to a functional medicine doctor up at the Ultra Wellness Center in Massachusetts. And
Mhm.
at that time, I couldn't really find, functional medicine, besides this nutritionist that I knew that was kind of practicing it. There wasn't much around. It wasn't really
Mhm.
talked about much. And so that was the real start where we made some serious changes. And, my daughter and myself both had to give up gluten and dairy
Mhm.
initially. And then did supplements and probiotics to rebuild our guts because we were just in such a weakened state. And the most profound thing that happened after that, like after I made these changes, just like after my daughter was about 18 months at this point. So she was drinking a lot of milk because I was told at
Mhm.
one they should go on, whole milk. So she was drinking a
Mhm.
lot of that. And so when we took that out and we added probiotics and we added some supplements to boost her immune system, she never got another ear infection again. And at that
Wow.
point, at 18 months, the pediatrician had said, if she gets one more of these, we're going to have to be putting, surgery for tubes in her ears.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh boy, didn't really want to have to go down that avenue. And that
Yeah.
was like the most profound thing to me, like that she never had another one again. I mean, now she's 11, she's never had one since. And that was after just those changes, which, seemed significant at the time. And it can be very challenging to find a new style of eating. I wouldn't discount it in any way. But it was just so amazing what I saw, once we made these changes that I was just like, wow, like this really works.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So were you breastfeeding? Did you continue to breastfeed her after her initial um, diagnosis of having the allergies to eggs and shellfish and so forth?
I did. Yeah. I breastfed her until she was 2.
Okay.
So yeah, so I did continue. It was actually really hard for me because when I had the C. diff, I had to stop breastfeeding because I had to treat with antibiotics that were too
Mm.
dangerous with breastfeeding. But yeah, no, we were able to persevere through that, and I did continue. And I think, certainly as I cleaned up my diet too, obviously I was producing healthier milk. Like it was,
Mhm.
it all worked together. But yeah, so it just was such a eye-opening experience. And so that experience actually led me to help my second child, my middle son. He was around the time like we made our changes. He had been flagged in school for attention issues and also learning disability or learning issues. So
Mhm.
he was not reading properly. Like there were things going on, and he also was not focusing very well.
Mhm.
And he had always had some issues that I hadn't really, connected. But remember, I had this new piece of knowledge, like, oh, food
Right.
does affect things. So,
Right.
I started to question some things. And like when he was 2, I had went for counseling because his behavior was very difficult. He would
Mm.
have like emotional outbursts. He just seemed a very like uneven temperament. I had a hard time parenting him. And I had an older son, so this was my second child, it wasn't like my first. I was like, I kind of know what I'm doing.
Right.
And I was having problems. So I ended up seeing a counselor for some help, and they gave me like some tactical things to try, and it helped a little bit, but like there was still this underlying thing going on. And he had gut issues. He had issues with constipation, and the pediatrician had told me, to put him on Marilax, and then he would throw up too. Like if he ate highly processed foods or something like fast food, he might eat it and throw up. Whereas like my older son could eat it and he was okay. So
Interesting.
those pieces, like, we're sitting there. And so when he got flagged for these things in school, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to have him looked at by a functional medicine physician to just see what they think. And lo and behold, it turned out that he did have a lot of food sensitivities. They were just showing up in like different ways, not the same as
Yeah.
before, but they were there. And, I'll never forget, this was before actually I knew anything about functional medicine. One day my son had been to a camp. It was like a day camp where they had given him like tons of candy and artificial like drinks, that have dyes in them and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And he had the biggest meltdown of his entire life. Like it was,
Really.
I couldn't control him. I didn't know what to do. I felt like as the parent, I was like, just lost control. I was in tears. My other kids are crying. He was raging, and I could see he was just not even, mentally with me anymore. He was gone.
Mhm.
And, so as I went to the functional medicine doctor to kind of tell Colin, or my son Colin, his story, it really, like I remembered that a day and I was like, oh my gosh, like I never connected. Maybe it was what he ate that day. Maybe those foods like didn't agree with him and were mentally
Mhm.
blaming him, but again, you always go back to, well, my older son ate that stuff and he was okay.
Right, right.
So, and then of course my pediatrician would never say that those were a problem. Like they never suggested that.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I had that whole aha moment, and then I, getting help from the functional medicine protocol and changing like his lifestyle really made a massive difference. His whole personality changed. He was a calmer kid, and some of it was even about balancing his blood sugar better, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
just giving him, if he's going to have a heavy carb meal, making sure there's some protein and fat with that. So he
Mhm.
wasn't on this roller coaster all the time, which was
Right.
certainly impacting his brain and his attention and all that. So
Wow. That's what an incredible story. And what an incredible testament to your attention to your children. Because, I think in so many cases with us as parents, we are wanting to do the best for our kids, but maybe we're pulled in so many different directions, or we're hearing from society or educators or doctors or whatever it is, you need to do this, or, this is your problem, or whatever it is. And, as parents, we really need to kind of follow our intuition, and not be okay with just letting it go. It is what it is, right? It's not just that your child is just a temperamental toddler and that's just it. Maybe there's something else. So, what a testament to really using that tuition and starting to ask those questions, and utilizing the resources that started to come to you more and more, not just for yourself and for your daughter, but for other members of your family as well.
sure. And like, I really would just, want to stress that it was like a process. I didn't change everything all at once, because even
Mhm.
if I did, I think I would have been so overwhelmed. I never could have stuck with it. Like, I don't think it would have been sustainable,
Mhm.
because it just, it is a journey and it's not in your learning as you go. And I think, obviously the science and stuff is always changing too. So it's just nice, like if you have that support of,
Mhm.
a community, it really helps. And I was lucky because my mom was a huge help. Like she was interested in this path, because
Mhm.
certainly have naysayers, right? And like you said, all these different voices telling you different things, you kind of stop listening to your own gut sometimes and just, kind of go with what everybody's saying. So I just really think it's just, making those changes slowly, but like finding people to reach out to and to communicate with, because there's more people out there, I think, that are interested in looking different angles. They just sometimes maybe don't know where to start or feel
Mhm.
afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. So with your son, how is he doing in school? Is he able to focus now? Is he, how is his learning? Is he able to absorb material and read better and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the transformation was profound. This was around, I guess he was about 6 when we really started to make, the changes.
Mhm.
He is 14 right now. He just started high school. He ultimately was diagnosed with ADHD. So he does have that diagnosis. And he does get, support for that as far as, just in school, but we have never done the medication route at this point.
Mhm.
I'm certainly not opposed to medications if people need them, or if they would, if it seems like that's what we need. But at this point, we have never needed that, just
Mhm.
by making these changes. And also lifestyle factors, right? Like making sure he gets enough sleep and, keeping the supplements, trying your best with the screen time. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a really hard one, especially now. I mean, with a high
Yeah.
school, things have evolved and changed as he's gotten older. But I feel like just by starting that like foundation, with these good habits, it really just has carried him through.
Mhm.
And he's a teen, and there has been times where he's rebelled a bit on certain things or wanted to switch things up. And that's okay. Like it's not about perfection, like every day eating this robotic way or something. It's more
Mhm.
about, fitting it into your lifestyle, trying to make the more cumulative good choices as much as you can.
Right.
And that really adds up, those like micro decisions we make all day and what we're eating or how we're sleeping or how we're, treating ourselves really does make a difference. So he is definitely a success story. He gets good grades. He was able to, he reads, on grade level. All those things that were like holding him back really just started to
Mhm.
open up, like once we gave his brain what it needed.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And so, what about your daughter? How is she doing with her food allergies and, all of the gut issues that she was experiencing? What's going on with her now?
Yeah, so she is doing so much better as well. She, like I said, the profound thing was when the ear infection stopped. But then
Mhm.
over time, her whole immune system started to just strengthen. We weren't so, she wasn't catching every single cold that came around. She was getting stronger. And she was able to drop some of her food allergies. So
Wow.
yeah, she can eat eggs now, and she can eat certain tree nuts. She eats peanut butter, and hazelnuts. And so there's like some options. She does still have severe allergies to shellfish
Mhm.
um, and to nuts. But the door was open so much wider, right? Like originally it was, oh no, we'll never be going anywhere. We'll always be trapped and this is horrible. And so everything just seems more like, tolerable and controllable. And, she is so much healthier. And I will say, like, my older son and my husband didn't have these, issues that we had.
Mhm.
However, like, as we evolved as a family, they started to eat, the way we do as a family. We all kind of started to make the changes together. It wasn't like just certain people had to eat certain things. And I think that was a key piece because it really strengthen their immune systems too. My older son used to get a lot of like strep throat and things like that. And once we started to kind of change the supplements and eat different, it's like gone. Like he doesn't
Mhm.
get that anymore. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So even, just with them where they didn't have anything specific to seek out functional medicine, they still reap the benefits from the changes.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, just wonderful. Like, what a beautiful story of hope for families out there who may be struggling with a variety of different things. And I think it's important to note that everyone's internal issues present outwardly differently, right? Your daughter and your son, both of them, and even your older son, how you mentioned with getting strep over and over, all of those, all three children were having internal issues that were presenting differently. And so, I really want to encourage the parents who may be watching to really take note of what's going on with each child individually if you have multiple children, because they could all be having gut issues, but it's not necessarily going to present exactly the same. And so, just making note of that and being very cognizant of what's going on with each child, and then addressing it in a way. I loved how you talked about you all made the changes together. And even though it wasn't everything all at once, was a little bit of this. Okay, we're going to try this and remove this and add this in. And each little step every single day built that consistency for your whole family. So all of you benefited from that.
Exactly. And I will stress that my husband was never really one to look in different directions. He was a very by the book, you go to the doctor, whatever they say, but when he started noticing the changes in our kids, he was 100% on board. He was wow, she's not getting ear infections anymore. He's not having outbursts anymore. This is working. He was, it was, really happening and really working. So he became a total believer, and he's someone that you wouldn't think typically that would be even looking in different directions, just the way he is. He was just more of a, you go to the doctor, do what they say, and that's it. So yeah. So that thing was so great. And I think, moving forward, I just really want to work with other families and build more community and more awareness of this so that we can all support each other, because it's just so amazing, what can be done when you have the support. And again, I was really lucky to have my mom that was interested in this avenue, but not everybody has that. So, reach out and support one another. Big changes for our health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to backtrack a little bit to something that you mentioned earlier in our conversation. You stated that you started with yourself. And I think that, for moms especially, we love to take care of other people, whether that's our spouse, our children, our friend groups, the people at our church. We love to give and volunteer and do all these other things. But sometimes we really, really, actually not even sometimes, all the time, we really need to stop and kind of take note of how we are doing, right? Really focus inwardly and say, okay, what's going on with me? How am I feeling? Where's my mental health today? What's my physical health looking like? Have I even been to the doctor recently, right? When was the last time I had blood work done? All of those types of things. Because when we start with ourselves, we can get ourselves to a really good and strong place, and then really be able to serve all of those other people we want to help.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point you made. I guess at the time I wasn't thinking that. I guess because I was so depleted, I was just thinking, wow, how can I help, my family if I'm a mess right now? My gut is such a mess. But yeah, you're right. I think if I hadn't started with myself, maybe the journey wouldn't have happened, because I wouldn't have had the strength or perseverance to get through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so, so, so important for people really to kind of stop and take note of what's happening with them, and then be able to continue moving forward in a way that's going to be productive for themselves, but also for the people around them as well. It affects our relationships so much when we are working only in kind of this survival mode. And there are certain seasons of life, where it kind of is okay, I just got to put my head down and plow through this. But that's not really what long-term life is supposed to look like, right? Not long-term parenting, not long-term work situations, not long-term in your friendships and things like that. That may be a very short-term kind of, okay, I'm in this season and I just gotta do it. But over the long term, we really need to take stock in how we're doing and how we're feeling, and build that consistency so that even in those seasons of survival, right, we are able to persevere and come out the other side being okay, rather than fully depleted and kind of having to start all over again.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, I was in that crazy season when she was diagnosed, and I had to seed it. That was the crazy part. But yes, as the dust settled, it was okay, what can we do to rebuild? Starting with me. Yes,
Right. Yeah. Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation. And I'm so encouraged by your story. And I appreciate you so much for sharing it with me and for the rest of the viewers. If people want to connect with you, can they contact you and maybe ask you more questions, or kind of get a little bit more about your story? How can they connect with you?
Yes, so they can connect with me at, they can email me at info@njhealthcoaching.com. And I do want to share that I am working with another functional medicine health coach who is also a New Jersey-based mom, on putting together a podcast to really kind of build community for
Mhm.
moms and families that really want to look in these different directions, because I think the support is still a little bit limited out there if you want to, explore some of these things. And I think that it's very powerful if we can get together as groups. And so if anyone is interested in sharing their story or helping us, just develop this further, or be a part of this movement, we would love to hear from you.
That is awesome. So good to hear. Yes, you guys connect with Kristin, send her an email, send her a shout out, let her know how much you enjoyed hearing her share her story today. And for everybody who is watching, don't forget to subscribe to Health Coaching with Krisler, this channel. Make sure you continue to watch all the combos so that you can get all the information and be encouraged with these stories of hope and perseverance. Until next time, I will see you guys. Bye.